often say, even although they may be quite proficient at drawing and painting, that when it comes to figures and animals, they lose confidence. But in fact, it's not as difficult as it might appear, and I'm going to show you some techniques to help build your confidence. One of the main points is to keep practicing, and working in a sketchbook helps, because in one such as this, you can work in pen, pencil, watercolour. I've even got pastel in this one, and it just helps to make marks. They won't all be successful. Some of them might be terrible, but you won't be so precious about everything that you do. And the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. Making marks with pens and pencils is great fun because you can have drawing with just an ordinary pencil. This one is an HB, which makes just a light mark. Whereas other times, if I want a heavier, stronger drawing with pencil, I might use one of these pencils, which are soluble with water. And if I take a bit of water through that, it just melts the line slightly and makes it a bit softer. The same with pen. When you're working with some pens, I like to work with the soluble type. This particular one actually goes into a lovely dark mauve wash, which also takes away the hardness of working with a solid pen line, which frightens a lot of people. These pens also can come in sepia, and the sepia one makes a lovely pinky orangey wash, which also looks quite attractive. The blue I don't use as much, it's rather a strong wash, but it again dissolves into a lovely melting tonal value, which makes your drawings much more fluid. Portability is the most important thing when you're working outdoors, and I like to work with this little Cotman box when I'm working in watercolour because it's light, easy to carry, and it's even got an extra hidden compartment here for mixing. But when I'm working indoors, I prefer to work with this big palette, which gives me lots more room for mixing. And I use a basic palette of 7 colours, which I'll run through with you now. The first colour is lemon yellow, and it makes a lovely bright citrusy colour, which is good for mixing oranges and fresh greens. My next one, which is very important for sketching, you'll see later, is raw sienna. It's a transparent colour, so I can use it very weakly, which gives me plenty of scope for putting light drawing in without making mistakes. My next colour is a good dark burnt umber, which gives me plenty of scope for very dark shadows. That will be mixed with blue later. My reds, one important one is light red, which makes a lovely mixture with ultramarine. The next colour is alizarin crimson, good for making purples, and that will come in handy for some of the skin tones we do later. And then the blues, one of probably the most busy working colours of all is ultramarine, French ultramarine, which is a great mixer with light red, and it also mixes with burnt umber to make black and Payne's grey. The other last colour is Prussian blue, or Windsor blue if you prefer to use artist colour. These are all a mixture. I'm not that precious about whether to use artist quality or student's quality when you're practicing. It doesn't really matter too much. One of the most important mixtures for shadows is light red and ultramarine, which when mixed together can give you this warm, slightly mauvish brown, or if I add more blue to it, I get a lovely cool, almost neutral grey. The other mixture I use is to mix Prussian blue with burnt umber, and that gives me a delicious instant dark green. Either a cool version like that, that's very dark, or a little bit more burnt umber to make it a more woody green. So that's instant dark greens, which are normally quite difficult to mix. When it comes to oils, we've got lemon yellow, raw sienna, burnt umber, light red, alizarin crimson, ultramarine, and finally Prussian blue. Now that's them in their raw state, which is very similar to the watercolour. But if you take the burnt umber, for example, and mix it with a bit of white, you'll see you get a different consistency. It becomes a solid, opaque colour. Let's make that a bit darker. And again, for instance, if we take ultramarine and light red, as we did before as a mixture, to make that lovely purpley grey, a bit more ultramarine, and this time we'll add white to it. It changes the consistency again, makes it that little bit more thick and opaque. As that gets lighter, it's got more white in it, it's got more body. So in fact that will cover any underpainting that's gone on before. Pastels are another portable medium, starting with the lemon yellow, raw sienna, there's the burnt umber, and it is possible to work with these few colours. That's more like the alizarin, it's a little bit light, but it will do, we can improvise. Ultramarine and a sort of Prussian. Don't be too specific about these exact colours, because in pastel they tend to give them different names anyway. But if we took out that 7 basic range and we had the white as well, and I take a few extra colours out, shortcuts such as sky blue, which is very useful in landscape, and another one that's called Payne's Grey, but it looks nothing like Payne's Grey. It's actually a rather nice dull turquoise. A ready-made green, what I call middle of the road green, not too dark, not too light. It's called a portrait pink, which I hasten to add is only a base colour. It really doesn't do for skin tone on its own. Plus a Naples yellow and a red earth. Now that still keeps it to about a dozen, not too many to carry. But when it comes to mixing other greens, for example, you could take the ultramarine and go straight over. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't mix with pastel. So if we try the ultramarine again, just blow off the excess and take the light red on top, a little bit of rubbing on top, and you've got that lovely dark purpley mixture that we had before. In fact, let's just try that again, and let's use a burnt umber this time to make a sort of black, because ultramarine and burnt umber will make a good homemade black, which is kinder than a jet black. And if we add a bit of white on top of that, we can make that grey. So with pastels, oils and watercolour, although there's hundreds more tints that you could take out, we're going to keep it simple, keep it to the basic palette, and that will help us to concentrate on the figures and the animals.